When I travel, I usually like to watch the news channels in those particular countries. And it's hilarious that once you get out of the US, you see a different, like, the BBC, Al Jazeera, NRK in Norway. And there's other ones that are in like Sweden, Denmark, and you sit there and you see that the coverage is much more neutral.
Yeah.
Usually
Plainer, more boring, right? But
right.
It's
boring as hell.
Yeah.
Boring as hell.
Give me that. That's what I want.
Give me the Walter Cronkite of like the 70s and late 60s, you know? Like just that's what it is. You know what I mean? Like this is what happened in the world today. Like that's
the only one that I didn't have any interest in or didn't have any feel from was when I went to Japan. And that's only because I didn't understand what the hell he was talking about at all.
It probably was quite soothing, I don't, it's like
there was no murders on the news, no school shootings. It was.
I was liking Reuters for a while, and then Associated Press. Like not everyone understands what the Associated Press was. When I was at CBS News, the Associated Press feed would come down, and all of the major outlets would contribute to the Associated Press, and then they would have a feed of their own news. So Associated Press, for the most part, didn't really have their own identity. It was sort of a best of, but there was some trust in it because it was taking what people believe was the most accurate stuff and posting that. But it's no more accurate than anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, it's better than cable news, but not much.
Where do you see? Is there a solution that either of you guys can think of to quote unquote?
Frankly, I know you're not a fan of Moskin. Like I said, I'm not really on Twitter that much. I don't really use it that much. But the community notes thing was very interesting because when someone would post a story, community notes is like a sort of ratioed thing. If enough people notice like a factual error, a community note would be put on the story. Hey, just so you know, this contradicts this,
and it's allowed to, I'm sure it's vetted at some point, like based on the community and like total votes and everything, something like that. Almost like a Wikipedia type of thing.
Truth is, I don't know how perfect it is. It's probably deeply imperfect, but I can't really think of much else. At least the public's chiming in. I mean, like forever, we would just stare into the TV and just trust what was coming through,
Yeah. Hey, back in the 80s when they had like the evening news and stuff, you got this micro sliver of what was happening locally, around the country, around the world, right? And it's what they deemed was important for you to know about. And now we have a 24/7 news cycle that allows us to see a lot more. But with that comes, how do we keep your attention? So in order to keep your attention, they sensationalize a lot of it. Otherwise, nobody's going to pay attention to it. You're not going to give a shit about some puppy dog getting rescued from a well. You want to know what country, some other country just invaded over some resource. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Most of the other countries, the news is funded by the government. So it's not like they have to make a profit, at least segments of it, at least. You know what I mean? So, and I'm not big on, I mean, there's definitely a danger with that the government's controlling.
Canada's having issues with that now, actually.
Right. But the fact that they don't have to basically beg for funding, or not funding, but they're not incentivized to keep you engaged.
Right.
Yeah.
They're basically there to just hear the facts. This is what it is. Most of when Cronkite and them were around, they didn't look at the news as a money-making venture. They expected this was just kind of like what we did as a country to inform people.
Right. It was a responsibility to tell what was going on, right?
Even on the initial networks, was it CBS, NBC, ABC? That was the deal. It's like, here's your broadcast license. The agreement with the government and those networks is that, you do the news, and in exchange, you do a good job, you do it accurately as possible. In exchange, yes, you get to make a ton of money off the shows. We're giving you this. You make the shows, you make a fortune off the ads, but news, that's the price you're paying. That's your contribution to American society.
Right.
So it was half an hour back? Was it half an hour in the evening?
Yeah. For each. The local, statewide, and then you had like your national and global news, right? At like 6:30, and then it was freaking Jeopardy.
And the thing is, they talked about it like no one would interfere in the news. The network would never come down on the news sectional stuff. Like, there's that movie, The Insider, which you kind of would find out they would, what was it, Phillips owned, I think it was CBS or something.
Philip Morris?
Philip Morris, maybe, and then so they killed a story, but that was a big thing. It was a huge controversy on 60 Minutes because they were killing a story because the parent company would be affected by it.
Right.
So you do realize that it did get dirty, and the truth is maybe it was always dirty, but we just didn't have enough money. We didn't have enough information to tell.
I just shake my head, look, because I used to watch a ton of cable news. And then you realize if you watch enough of it, they repeat the same shows and the same stories over and over over a 24-hour period.
I can tell you why some of that happens. You know, they show those clips where it's like 20 news affiliates saying the same exact story. That happens because of some of is laziness. It may be mandated to some degree by the parent company, but how it actually happens is a feed comes down. And the feed is typically the story will come down and the audio tracks will be separated. The reporter track will be there, and then the soundbite and the natural sound track will be separated. And what that allows to do is if you don't have enough stories, if it's a slow news day or whatever, what you do is you strip the reporter's tracks. It's coming down from the national feed, let's say CBS National or Associated Press. You strip that, the reporter puts her own tracks in, and then on the nightly news they do a stand-up. And it's the same stand-up that was scripted. Typically, these are stories that were, let's say, popular or were well told nationally, so they got put on the feed so that everyone can pull from them. So that's actually how it happens. I'm not saying it's not nefarious, because what may happen was that it's possible that like someone's the news director, someone's getting direction and notes, and so they may be told, you run this story. You know, back when I was there, I think the news directors had a slightly more autonomy in being able to run somewhat. That the news producers could pick stories and then run them. But anyway, all that to say that's technically how it happens. You know, and I know that because I used to cut for CBS back in the day.
Yeah.